Welcome. Our presenter has been an engineer and Toastmaster for 20 years. As an engineer, he has attended and led many meetings. And out of frustration from sitting or leading through too many, shall we say, meetings that lacked purpose, direction, and control, our presenter undertook the challenge to research how to conduct meetings properly. He spent a lot of time doing this, and he developed a workshop that he has presented multiple times at places such as RBC, the Professional Engineers Ontario, Apotex, and then COVID hit, and we entered this virtual new world. So he continued his research, and today we are going to benefit from that research and what he's discovered in terms of how to run effective virtual meetings and how to plan effective virtual meetings. Please help us welcome our presenter, Justin Edenbaum.
Hello. Thank you, Andrew. If your business meeting hasn't had any fundamental changes since going virtual, you're probably missing out on opportunities to make them more productive. What I mean by more productive is they could be shorter, you could be getting more done, or maybe you don't have to meet as often. So that is what we're going to do during that workshop. For those of you who are not familiar with Zoom, and you haven't found my square, I'm Justin Edenbaum. On the top right of your screen, you could adjust what your view looks like. And I suggest you speaker view when I'm speaking, and then we will use a gallery view during discussions. And right now I'm going to share my screen. So you should be seeing my screen now. If I could see a couple of thumbs up from the individuals that are there. Oh, great. So Andrew has already stated, I did tons of research on how to run productive meetings, and then COVID hit. So what are we going to do? There's not as much literature out there about virtual meetings, and quite frankly, a lot of it is dated. So if you look on the bottom right of your screen, I read Running Virtual Meetings from the Harvard Business Review, and it's got some great information there, but some of it's outdated. So what I did is I went scouring through the rest of the Harvard Business Review articles that are out there. I run many virtual meetings, both when I was a president of a Toastmasters club, and this book Remote that you see there, this company has been working remotely since 2012, 2013. So they've got it down, and they and this is the way they wanted to operate before COVID hit. And so I'm taking some of the information from my personal experience in research and that book to bring you stuff today. So the purpose of this meeting is to learn techniques to lead virtual business meetings that use participants' time and energy effectively. Learn techniques to lead virtual business meetings using participants' time and energy effectively. We're going to define what a business meeting is. So that is something where it is 2 to 18 people, and you might be brainstorming, problem solving, decision-making, planning, and I put in status or not because you may not need meetings anymore to share status. That's something that has changed. But what is not a business meeting? A workshop or a webinar like this is not a business meeting. I'm going to incorporate elements of a business meeting into this workshop, but some of the things I'm doing should not be done during a workshop. And I'll point a couple of those things out so you can learn the difference. Conferences. The large Toastmasters conference you're attending today is not a virtual business meeting unless it is that one section of the meeting that is a business meeting. And those times when it's one-on-one connections, or even it could even be 3 people, but perhaps it's not a business meeting. And once you have more than 19, and I'm going to show you some things about why I'm selecting these numbers, but once you have more than 19, it's really not the type of virtual business meeting that I'm discussing. How are we going to learn today? I want you to know I'm going to send you all the slides so that you don't have to sit there and worry about copying everything down. We're also going to learn from each other. For those of you who I haven't met before, I'm sure you have great information to share. And for some of the people that I have met before, I know they have great information to share. So there is a raise your hand option to stop for questions. So that is how we're going to, I would ask you if you need me to stop. So if everyone could try and raise their hand right now, we'll make sure that you know what you're doing. It's on the lower left-hand side of your screen. There should be an option, or perhaps on the bottom, to raise your hand. So go ahead and do that now. And Andrew, if you see anyone who doesn't have it, let's make sure that we can help them out privately. So if you could figure out how to raise your hand on the bottom of your screen there, or is it in the middle? All right.
Yeah,
we will get a chance to stop. Yeah, go ahead, Andrew.
Yeah, it could be in the participants panel as well. Yeah. So if you open the participants panel and then hover over your name, you can raise your hand.
Or on the right-hand side of the center section under reactions.
Yes. You will notice I've tried to practice with the Zoom as much as possible, but I'm a Microsoft Teams guy. But what I'm going to be teaching during this workshop are the fundamentals. And then you will have to practice with whatever technology that you have to make things work properly. And we are also going to stop for discussions where we're going to share the screen, where I'm going to take the slides down. There is a chat feature. And we'll make sure you know how to use it at the right time. I only want that used during activities and discussions. And I will let you know when we're using that. And I will also explain why during why it's like that. So we are going to, so that is my opening. So before we begin, I'm going to ask if you have any questions about what we're trying to learn. And then the next thing we're going to do is go into the before meeting, during meeting, after meeting, and closing. That is today's agenda. So I'm going to stop the share, engage in our discussions. So you can just speak out, if you couldn't raise your hand. Do we have any questions before I begin? All right, seeing none, we're going to get right into what you need to do before a meeting. How would you feel if we started this workshop right now and I said to you, I haven't prepared anything. I don't have workshop slides. I don't have an agenda, but I did a lot of research. I read tons of books. I got great ideas. And in the next hour, I'm going to share some of them with you, and you're probably going to learn some stuff. And that'll be a good use of your time. I already see someone has figured out how to use an emoticon. They would be laughing. Would you feel good? Yes, no, you'd feel like I did not value your time. I did not value your time at 9:55 a.m. on a Sunday. I did not prepare. You would not be happy. You'd probably click off. And you need to show your participants that you care about their time. How do you do that? You need to prepare beforehand. The amount of time you're going to prepare is really proportional to who is going to be at the meeting and how many are invited. I was potentially taking up 37 people's time this morning at Sunday at 10 a.m. So I better be prepared. If it's my boss or a client that pays me a lot of money, you better be prepared. So I'm going to show you what you need to be doing before your meeting happens. And this is where you are going to spend the most self-work. Work that you do alone or perhaps with others to prepare for the virtual meeting. The amount of time you spend at the meeting is probably going to be less. And then the amount of time you spend after the meeting is going to be even less than that. The point is if you do the work ahead of time, the rest of the time that you need will decrease. So what should you be doing before the meeting? You need to define your goals, perhaps as your organization or as whatever you want to achieve, but then you have to take that and break down into the purpose statements. What can I accomplish at a meeting? So let's give an example. We're all in Toastmasters. Many of us have become presidents at time or perhaps VP of membership. And you say, we've got to increase the membership of our organization. If we don't continue to increase, our club could potentially get too small and not be effective. That is a great goal, increase membership. But you cannot accomplish that at a meeting. At the meeting, you're not all getting on the phone and taking credit card numbers and increasing the number of people at the meeting right there. But what you can do at a meeting is you can create a plan. What is our plan going to be to get 6 members to join our club? Or perhaps we're going to get an update on how are you doing on your action items to get 6 members? Perhaps we're going to look at a status. We've got 2 of 6. What else do we need to do? Now, during these times when we are stuck inside and with the foreboding messages we originally heard on Friday, I am obsessed with getting the heck out of Ontario. So I might have a goal of have a great vacation. That's a goal, but you can't accomplish that at a meeting because we're not all getting in a car and driving somewhere. But you can brainstorm vacation ideas. You can determine how to evaluate those ideas. You can select the top 3 vacation ideas, and you could have a meeting that reviews the research. You're going to present, you're going to present, you're going to present, and let's go through and start to review it. So what we're going to do now is make sure you understand the difference between a goal and a purpose statement. Now, this isn't much different than what you would do in a standard business meeting, but in all the research, they re-emphasize this point. So here is the activity we're all going to partake in. I'll leave this screen up for a little while, and then I'm going to take it down. You're going to create a purpose statement for a 30-minute meeting. I've chosen 30 minutes because the best meetings I've had and the best meetings that you read in other books can be done in 25 minutes. Now, that's not all the time. So what can you do in 30 minutes? What I want you to do is sit there and think for 60 seconds about a goal or organization. It could be your family, it could be Toastmasters, it could be your church, and think about a goal you want to achieve and perhaps a meeting you want to host. Brainstorm, problem solving, decision making. What do you want to do? And in the second 60 seconds, you're going to write a sentence into the chat. And Andrew and I will review them, and then we will discuss them together to make sure you understand what you need to do for a purpose statement. So I'm going to leave this up. Does anyone have any questions? Please unmute yourself and just ask away if you need more instructions for the activity. Okay, I will get my timer started. So think for 60 seconds. I'll give you an indication and go ahead and chat, put that in the chat window, what you think it should be. It has been 60 seconds. So I've seen some of the information popping up here. Some of these things might be goals. So I want you to think about in the next 60 seconds, what can I accomplish in 30 minutes that involves other people in discussions and I need their input? I'll give you an example. Someone put in the chat, product presentation to a new client in Quebec. That is a presentation. That is not a meeting. That is a horse and pony show, if you will. So perhaps you need to prepare for that presentation. Another quick example, to reduce number of customer rejections, actually, that's a good one. So once again, I'm going to give you another 30 seconds here. Think about a meeting that you need the input from others, that you're gathering information and working together in a 30-minute meeting. I'll give you another 30 seconds. Okay. So I'm going to go through, if you still want to type a little bit, please go ahead. I'm going to pick out a couple of them in the chat window. So I have it open on my left. So I apologize. I'm very bad with pronouncing names. Gurinja, please tell me how to pronounce your name properly. Did I get it right?
Yeah, Girija. Yeah, that's right.
All right. So I am going to, we're going to keep your mic on. Keep your mic on. We're going to chat real quick. Your goal is to have a canoeing trip, camping trip. Perfect. That is your goal. Brainstorm available options. You can have a meeting about that. Let's all talk. What do we want? What's important to us? Evaluate and finalize camping spots. What I will say is, you may not do that. You may not gather that information at the meeting, but everyone's going to bring something to evaluate. Is that kind of where you were going with that?
Yes, because I also thought that
Yeah. So that's
booking might not be possible. So it's at least having the next step could be booking it if we identify one place.
right.
Yeah.
Right. What we're going to, and thank you for making that distinction. I'm going to come back to it later. Andrew, is there any other ones in the chat you think we should talk about?
Take myself off mute. There's one from
Snoopy.
Tim here around the options for development.
Yeah.
The second phase of a website development. So I think, Tim, what I think that's a purpose. So the goal is to continue or to update the website. And I guess the purpose of the 30-minute meeting would be to identify what development options do we have available to us to continue that development. Is that fair to say? And you're on mute as well.
You're on mute. Yeah.
Yeah, the most common line ever used. You're on mute.
I know.
The idea was that we have several people who are on a development team for the next phase of the website. We have not yet met. We all have different ideas on what we would like to have in that website. So the meeting would be to select those ideas which are appropriate and determine who would be doing them.
Yeah, so you're either having a brainstorming meeting or a decision meeting, and you could combine two, but or people are going to present and then you're going to decide what you want to do. So that is good as well. Mm-hmm. There was one other I want to use to reduce number of customer rejections. That's a big goal. So what you want to do is kind of just say, identify why we're getting rejected and maybe work that way. And then for Bruce, the importance of maintaining a family tree. Let me ask you, Bruce, are you making a presentation on your feelings on why it's important, or are you trying to see if talk to me about what you're trying to accomplish?
The thought that entered my mind was getting a bunch of family members together, whether it be a Zoom call or not, and talk about the importance of creating a family tree and then maintaining it to keep it going. And
so so I'm going to break it down into 2 or 3 things that would get in a meeting, which is you could say brainstorm the importance, or maybe as a family decide if we're going to keep maintaining. Just be careful. We're all Toastmasters. We love our 5 to 7 minute presentations. You're not a virtual business meeting is not the same as I'm going to pitch you an idea and try and sell you on my idea. I just want you to make sure you understand the difference between the two. Okay. So we're going to, are there any other, does everyone, the whole point of having exercise and the discussion is to understand you may have outstanding goals, but the purpose statement or what you can do in 30 minutes is not always the same thing. tell me what other information or questions you have so you feel comfortable creating a purpose statement for what you need in a 30-minute meeting. You just unmute and speak up if you need, if you want to talk about this anymore. All right. We can always come back. There will be time for questions. Oh yeah, go ahead.
Sorry. How to get the consensus? So if it's a big business meeting and we are trying to achieve some goal with cross-functional team, how to arrive at consensus?
I'm going to get back to that. So in fact, I'm going to call, I'm putting it in my parking lot, so to speak. How to get consensus. I'm going to answer that later.
Thank you.
All right. Any other questions or points? Tim, did you unmute for anything particular or just to say hi? We're good? All right. We will always have time to come back. Do you guys see your chat windows in the share screen? Yeah, okay. I'll have to minimize that for now. All right, you have just, at this point in your preparation, you hopefully have a purpose statement. The next thing you're going to do is prepare an agenda with time. The agenda is going to be key for everything, okay? And so you really have to make sure you have one ready. It's going to start with your purpose statement, your preparation or what you want someone to do beforehand. And here's another key for virtual meetings. You have got to break it down into small pieces. When you had an in-person meeting and Snoopy, I know your name's Janet, but if Snoopy starts wandering out of the meeting and playing on their phone, doing a video game, looking up what they're going to order for lunch, you see that, but you don't in virtual meetings. So to keep people's attention, you've got to break it down into small chunks. And those small chunks should ideally be in 5 to 10 minutes. And you're going to want a time for each of those events. I sent out an agenda to you before this meeting as an example of how I would want it sent out for a meeting so that you could see what I believe is a good way to do this. After you do that, but before you even send it out, you need to ask yourself, is a meeting necessary? You're going to see a term that's going to probably become more popular. It's called asynchronous communication. And it's a very complicated way of saying, do we all have to be talking and in the same place at the same time? In this environment, we do to get that feedback. But sometimes you can do it over chat, over email. Perhaps only a couple people need a quick phone call. And that's why I say status meetings might not be necessary anymore. In the book Remote, the company there basically has different ways that people will update the status on what they're doing. Everyone is required or expected to read those statuses. And only if a meeting is necessary is one called. Now, you may still need to keep status meetings because some people won't read it or write their what's going on. But you may want to rethink if you need a status meeting or not. And then after you do that, in the virtual world, it is easy to invite everyone in the world to your meeting. They don't have to travel or fly. Maybe they have to wake up at 2 a.m. if you haven't thought about the world time zones, but fewer is almost always better for a virtual business meeting. And so you saw some numbers earlier on, and I'm going to tell you about the 1800 rule. The most people you can have for problem solving and decision making, or the ideal max, is 8 people. It gets more difficult after that. Then you could have up to 18. You can have up to 18 to brainstorm, perhaps do updates like those status updates. But I got asked earlier about consensus. Consensus is difficult with 18 people. And I'm going to come back to how to get that consensus after I finish this slide. Once you're more than 18, you are not in a virtual business meeting anymore. And if you are really going by Robert's rules, and it's a different ball game altogether. And it's outside the scope of this about this workshop. But for 1800, you could go up to 1800 is kind of the joke there. After 18, it's a different beast where you're doing presentations. It's mostly one-way communications with Q&A. And that is, I've covered everything that you need to do before the meeting. So following the agenda I sent out to you before, we are just finishing item D. So to finish my thoughts on consensus, how to gain consensus is you have to grant, if you are a large group or over 8, you may need to decide how a decision is going to be made. And it's best to communicate it out before you make the decision. So how can you make the decisions? It could be majority rules. We're all going to vote and the majority is the rule. Or it could be, I'm the boss. I want all your opinions. I want you to tell me your opinions. I'm making the decision. And you don't have to be as forceful about it. You say, I'm going to consider all your thoughts, but make it very clear if the consensus group really has that power or not, or if it's a one-person decision-making, or perhaps that goes to a committee. And that's how you gain consensus. So what questions do you have about what to do before a meeting or about consensus? Sorry, I should give you permission to unmute. What I will tell you is I showed you an agenda with time. I would never do that normally in a workshop because you shouldn't, there's reasons for that, but in a meeting, you are always going to follow that agenda with time. And you're going to see why when we go into what to do during the meeting. So any questions about what to do to prepare, what you need before the meeting? What is so much different for a virtual meeting? Please share your thoughts.
Just Girija here, just one thought. So in physical meetings, we usually used to take printouts or something material which people can refer to. In case of your agenda, you're probably going to have the material if there is a link or there is another document which we are going to refer. So that could also be like supporting or reference material is what I could think of.
Yeah. And one thing I didn't emphasize, because it's not much different for virtual or in-person meetings, is I'm going to tell you, the leader should tell the individuals exactly what they expect before the meeting. So I believe the invitation that I sent to you said to fill out the survey. And then the second thing said optionally you could download these things and look at it. I apologize. I did not incorporate the results of the survey into the presentation, but I will include it in the final version I send out to you. The data, the information I gather from the participants here and from myself is, well, it's more about during the meeting, but it basically shows you should be using technology. It makes things more productive. But I didn't want to gloss over the fact that I asked for information and I have not shown it to you yet.
Sure. Thanks, Jason.
You're welcome. Any other questions about what you need to do before the meeting? As you all saw, I made a mistake in my agenda. It said Saturday instead of Sunday, but I had the correct date. And that's by the way, that's an example of why I do that. It's so that if I mess something up, it's very evident and that something needs clarification. Any other questions about before the meeting, sending emails, coordinating across time zones?
How is that different from when you're in person? How is the preparation different?
For both, you should be doing a lot of preparation beforehand. The other difference is you want to make sure that they probably have the information beforehand so they can test their links, what technology they need. And other than that, there isn't much more different. The biggest difference is breaking your agenda down into smaller chunks. More differences come up during the meeting and potentially after the meeting.
Thanks.
But the other key, yeah, does that answer your question?
It does, thank you. The breaking it into chunks makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, the other thing I will say is the big difference, and I probably should have highlighted this, Valerie, is it is way too easy to keep adding. I kind of explained it. It's way too easy to keep adding people in. You know what? That person's free. Let them come in. And no, fewer is usually better for a business meeting.
Have a limit. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
And that limit should, ideally, it's 8. Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Justin, we do have a raised hand. Emily?
Yes.
Yes, I'm just
During
wondering.
discussion, just on mic.
Okay, I'm just wondering, for online meetings, do you always usually open the Zoom room a little bit earlier versus like in-person meetings? The meeting would start at 9:30, but even for this workshop, I noticed it was like Zoom room opens at 9:35, start time 9:45.
Thank you. That is a great question. In my research of what to do during virtual meetings, a lot of it was focused on team building. And it always said in the beginning, you should just sit there and gab. People miss hanging out with other people. And that's what I was doing beforehand. I know Bruce and Tim in person. So I like to schedule that time, because when the business meeting starts, that's when it starts. It's 9:45. If you're not in the room, you're late. You'll decide what you want to do, but that's why it was structured the way it was, Emily. So does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does.
I'm going against the common trend yeah, go ahead.
Because I find like online, a lot of people tend to show up later versus when it's in person. So I find it helpful as well.
Stop tolerating that. Start your meeting and then they're late. And don't penalize the people who show up on time. When people come in late, I say, I will listen, we're going to keep moving. We can talk one-on-one afterwards and I'll fill you in on what you missed. And maybe start your meeting 5 minutes later. You say, this will start at 9:05. I'll be there at 9 if you want to hang out. And Bruce, I saw your hand. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think I'm a big fan of the opening the room a little earlier, because it gives a chance for people to test their audio and their video.
Yeah. If it's your
whether
first,
they're presenting something or not, or asking questions, that kind of thing. So
yeah, if it's not a standard meeting and you're worried about it, then be very clear that, and I've done this for very large public meetings, I say this is opening here, but the business part of the meeting starts here.
correct. Yeah.
Great questions. Any other questions about beforehand? I'm looking at my clock and I'm a minute behind my agenda now, but this is a good discussion. Like I said, workshops should not normally have an agenda, but I'm trying to show as an example how we do it. This part of the meeting is going to be a little bit different than the other parts. So give me a second here. All right, so we just had a discussion on what's going on before the meeting. Now we're going to cover what to do during the meeting. And to Valerie's question, what's the difference? Most of it is during the meeting. And so as you learn experientially about what the difference is, it will change the way you prepare your agendas and things beforehand, but you kind of got to experience it. So for this session, I'm changing the ground rules. We can have discussions. You may unmute yourself and interrupt me at any point in time. And I'm going to be doing some demonstrations where we all might be participating. What I'm going to be essentially, I'm going to be trying to run this a little bit more like a virtual meeting so that you can see, I'm going to expose you to some ideas and get you thinking about how to use technology. So before we sort of do a demonstration, I'm going to have a conversation. And you may unmute yourself and say, excuse me, I have a question at any time right now. Overview. Once again, it's experiential and it's more learned by doing. So I'm going to try and expose you to things that you can try on your own. Technology is important, people. If you are not good with the technology, if it is not your strong suit, get someone to help you. Along the lines of experiential learning, my wife ends up being my guinea pig for things, and she'll be in another room so I could test and see how things work. Don't be scared of the technology, try it. When the meeting starts, you may want to assign roles. As you may have guessed, Andrew and I had some conversations before this workshop because we talked about what we're going to do with each other. Some of the roles you may assign during the meeting or even before is a scribe who's going to take notes, a timekeeper, a tech master. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about webcams and chat in a second, but back to the scribe. During the meeting, it is my opinion that you should pause and perhaps use the chat, but be very clear on what next actions are being defined. And that should be who's assigned to it and with a deadline. You may also record motions, and you will stop the meeting and say, all right, this is now a motion on the floor. Are we going to pass or reject? And then you may have an open item. So for example, before someone had said, how do I get consensus? Write it down somewhere if you're not going to address it at the meeting. Before we get into a little bit more of a discussion, I want to talk about the agenda. Well, actually, I'll talk about the agenda in a bit, but we're going to see the importance of the timekeeper. So with all that, the next thing we're going to do is I'm going to demonstrate some technology. But before we do, I want you, here's the slide. We're going to have a quick discussion. Webcams and chat. It is everything I have read says you should have your webcam on. If you want to be impactful, you should have your webcam on. If you don't care, don't have it on. But if you want to be impactful, have your webcam on. If you want to understand how your participants feel, if you want to make a connection, require them to have their webcam on. Some people in the survey said they don't like the webcam, or they said it's not as productive. I would say you probably are just uncomfortable with it, or you don't like it, or it takes effort to do your hair. For some. So, and then the second thing that I want to discuss with you is the chat. I believe you need to define what that chat is for or the behaviors you want. Because I've been in a business meeting or usually a larger meeting where all of a sudden we're talking about the COVID protocols to use during skiing. And I look in the chat and there's a debate going on if viruses are real or not. And that certain theories show that viruses do not exist and it's all a creation of some doctors. And I'm just like, that is irrelevant. We have to follow protocols given by the government. So we're not going to have that discussion. So what are your thoughts on webcams and chat before I get to the demonstration piece?
For Justin, for myself, I like to have the chat window open, but I move it over onto my right side monitor. So it's not,
yeah,
I can kind of glance at it, but still not look at it all the time.
See, I hear you, Bruce, and that's what I would typically try to do. But if I have the chat window open, I can't do two things at once. And so I like to define it as a ground rule that I'm not reading the chat. I'm not, because I can't connect with you. There's so much other stuff going on, and it takes me that energy to read. So for me, the point is define how you want the chat to be used. I think I have not come up with the best one. I haven't come up with the best way to do it yet, but the bottom line is to define it.
And Justin, I think you can have a role, right? You can have a role. You can have a chat moderator. So you're not looking at the chat. You have somebody else doing it on your behalf who will interrupt you if there's something relevant.
But that's more, and I agree with you. That's a great thing, but that's really more in the workshop role. If you have a meeting that's up to 8 or 18 people, if you start needing to do that, you're not really having a virtual business meeting anymore. You're having a presentation Q&A. It's a different beast.
Okay, then you can simply, there's a parameter that just cuts off chat. You can just simply say, nobody gets to chat with each other.
You could.
Yeah.
Oh, well, yeah, that's a good point.
By the way, we
try
have a
not
raised
to.
hand.
Yeah, go ahead. One more question, and then I'm going to be doing some demonstrations before I run out of too much time.
We have a raised hand. Is
Girish
it?
here.
Yeah.
So with
Whereas,
the video, I have had an experience that if I mention it in the agenda that the participants are required to be on the video or expected to be video, that increases the number of people who come on video. So that's one observation.
okay. I would probably use the word expected. Well, I try not to be too forceful. Otherwise, they may not even, well, if they're not attending, then they probably didn't need to be at the meeting or something's gone horribly wrong. You know, once again, virtual business meetings, not, you know, let's hang out. No, Bob's not hanging out with us tonight. But
Ludmila?
that's a good idea. You could put that right in the agenda.
Ludmila, I'm not sure how to pronounce.
Justin and everybody else that's on the camera, it is impactful. And there is a reason why I'm off. I've been on the camera since March last year, and I intentionally took it off. But I'll tell you, it's a requirement for our business meetings to always have a camera on. The second thing I learned from the presentations, if you don't tell people up front, and then we had meetings when it was a privacy concern, what happens, people are really trying to get on and the entire meeting is spent on their technical issues. Why am I not on? And that could be addressed, Justin.
Yeah. Yeah, and once again, that goes to what Bruce was hinting at before, or actually Emily had said, pre-meeting time. I'm available at 9:15 if you want to work through your tech, or I'm going to take you one-on-one. No one wants to sit there. I barely want to help, like my dad, do technology stuff, let alone have 10 people watch me do it. So keep that in mind. I'm going to stop taking questions, and I'm going to be doing some, I want to do some screen shares to show you some of how technology works. So I'm just going to take a quick look at the time on my agenda. So I want to go into after meeting stuff. I actually built some extra time into that. So Andrew, could you let me know when we're at 10:35?
Yes.
Thank you. I'm going to share my screen. By the way, sharing your screen is like the new, you could see me with my shirt off. It's like, oh, you could see what this guy's doing and what's on his desktop and all this other stuff. I sent, this is the copy of one of the links that I sent to you in your pre-meeting. This is the Excel sheet. I want to just show you the power of an agenda with time, and also you're now seeing what it means to share your screen. So right now, you could all click on the link that I gave you from Microsoft Excel, and you could come in here and share this with me. You would actually be able to type it. And in fact, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into the Word version of this, and I'm going to copy that Excel, and I'm going to put it in the chat. Now you can do the same thing with, oh, that didn't copy the link. As I stated before, I am a Microsoft guy, for better or worse. Right now, you could all get on a web browser and work with me. Some of you are here right now. I could see you right here. Why am I having you do all this? GC, go in there. I want you to go right into cell D15 and type over the end there. No, I'm sorry, D15. Go to D15. There you go. Oh, we got 2 GCs. Uh-oh, this is gonna, someone start typing. We'll see what happens. You see, I'm getting the 3 dots, and this is a test. All of you could right now, we could all be editing together at the same time. I'm showing you this for 2 reasons. 1, when you create an agenda for your meeting, you can have it so that everyone could participate and help you create the agenda. So I have a business meeting that's once every month. I typically will send out a link. It's usually in Google Sheets, actually. But individuals are supposed to add their own agenda items and how long they think it will take. And I then at the end will go through and put everything together in a proper order or decide if the agenda item needs to be there or not. But this is how everyone can work together. The second reason I'm showing you this is because we have a time. Now, remember, I told Andrew that we're going to discuss the during meeting until 10:35. So I'm just going to adjust the time here. And it'll automatically calculate that we're going to go into the after meeting discussion in 5 minutes. Why you have the time is because your agenda is now the bad guy. What I mean by that is if someone brings a question or an item that is not originally on the agenda, you then say that is an open item. This has to be discussed at another meeting. Right at the beginning of the meeting, you are going to get everyone to agree that this is the agenda you're going to follow, the agenda we worked so hard to create. Does anyone have any questions? Are we going to use this agenda? Get them to buy in on the agenda. Then as the meeting goes on, if someone brings something up that is not on the agenda, you need the approval of everyone in the room to change that agenda. And so the agenda becomes the bad guy when someone says, actually, I would like to talk about how to give a presentation. I don't care about virtual meetings. I'm very sorry, it's not on the agenda. We could talk about that another time. This is strictly about what to do before the meeting. Sorry, this is strictly about what to do during virtual business meetings. This is an example, once again, of how to share a document, how to share a screen, and how to get everyone's input. But as an agenda, get everyone to agree and buy into it initially. I'm going to stop the share for a second. What are your thoughts on that? Do you understand the power of sharing your screen and sharing the document virtually and understand the differences? Okay. Let me just, I'm gonna look at the slide. So the other tool, so that was a demonstration of sharing the screen. The other tools I can share, I could show you the whiteboard. I'll give you an option right now. I could show you the whiteboard so that everyone can draw and use it. On Zoom, it actually is quite a nice feature, or we can do another shared Word document. Raise your hand, you're gonna have to use the raise the hand feature. Raise your hand right now if you would like to see a shared Word document. And if we have more than a majority, I'll show a Word document. If not, I'll show the whiteboard. Who would like to see the Word document? Does anyone not know how to ask a question? You could just unmute yourself. We'll help you out. Only two. So to confirm, most people want to see the whiteboard. Snoopy said, someone with the name of Snoopy says whiteboards are more fun. Then you're too late. You didn't raise your hand for a Word document. Word documents are not fun. So I'm going to go to share screen. I'm going to go to whiteboard. I'm going to share. Ideally on a whiteboard that is shared, you'd rather have a background image that people can mark up. I can't go into how the technology gets used all the time, but ideally you'd show a picture and everyone draws. But this is an example of using the whiteboard. Now, Snoopy, actually, I'm going to need Andrew's help. Andrew, can you make sure that, and everyone unmute yourself if you have questions, because I cannot see hands right now. But see, Snoopy, try and draw for me. See if you can get in there and help edit my drawing.
Oh, I can. I don't think
you
so.
Can't. Yeah, it's probably disabled. Andrew, you are currently the host. Is that something you can fix?
So to annotate, if you go to the top of the screen, you should see something called View Options. And if you click on View Options, there's a drop down and there's something called Annotate. You can annotate and then you can start drawing. Does everybody see that? And just
I can tell you, Ludima sees it, Valerie sees it.
and Justin, it is 10:35.
This is
Thank
fun.
you.
Fun. Never knew that feature was there.
Yeah, I got exposed to this feature because I tutor students with a program called Pathways, and we actually have to draw out mathematical equations. I don't have the time to really show you what would ideally be the best is you get a picture on the background. Now, I'm an engineer, so maybe not everyone needs to do this, but I might have the drawing of a design or an analysis, and then everyone could come in here and highlight what to do. So for example, I might want to come in here and use a spotlight. Where's the spotlight? Yeah, and I can start to do a red dot. So I appreciate Snoopy for telling me to do this. If anyone wants this piece of artwork, I'll do a quick screen capture to get this artwork for everyone to enjoy at another time.
And you can do a save as well.
All right.
Justin, there's a save option.
Yeah,
Cool.
thank you. Yeah. So I'm going to go back to sharing my screen.
So 1036.
I asked, yes, thank you. We are now going to go into an after meeting discussion on what to do about after the meeting. The ground rules are changing back to the way things are done. And if you notice, I'm telling you the ground rules because this is how you would do a virtual meeting. Always tell people what you're expecting of them. So I'm going to do the speaking. We will then come to a point to stop. Andrew, let me know when we hit 1042. Actually, yeah, 1042. After the meeting. There was no point in meeting if there are no meetings sent afterwards. Famous words spoken by myself to you publicly for the first time now. I said this to Andrew during our preparation, and he says that's a powerful statement. So I decided that it should be put in quotes. If you're not sending people things after the meeting, it's like you never even met. You ever have a meeting and someone says they're going to write the newsletter article, and a week later it's not written? It's not their fault. If you didn't send an after meeting note that included the action items, if you didn't follow up with them, half the job of being a leader is follow up these days. So you need to send out your meeting notes afterwards. What is included in those meeting notes? Well, ladies and gentlemen, I told you to spend so much time preparing the perfect agenda, or perhaps working together on an agenda. And so the perfect time in an agenda. So you are going to include that in your meeting minutes, probably at the bottom. What you are going to start your meeting notes afterward with is, here are the action items. This is what I expect everyone to do. These are the decisions we made. These are some of the open items, and you will send that out as an email. So my screen is currently being shared. In the document that I shared with you on Microsoft Word, I started to show you what an action item list might look like. The action during the meeting, I'll remind you, you are going to stop and capture all action items. Your scribe will capture it. You then paste that in an email, or you have it live in a cloud document. So everyone who's currently still in my document, if you want to play along, you could create an action item for me if you want, and that is due today. Or it was assigned today and it's due today. And you could all come in here and do this. And the point is it's very public. It's what everyone, and you can continually following up with it. Actually, and another item is send the slides to you guys. For the meetings that I have regularly, the once a month board meeting I have with my ski club, and for all of you going forward, the second or third action item after accepting the agenda during your meeting is to review action items. There's no point in meeting if you're not going to send out meeting notes, and there's no point in meeting a second time if you are not going through your action items and making sure people are doing them, or at a minimum, making progress. And that's really all I want to say about what you need to do after the meeting. Are there any questions on what you need to do after a meeting?
Looks like you have
I'll
a couple of
reiterate,
raised
that
hands.
is why I think that was from voting to play with the whiteboard.
Okay.
Just unmute yourself and interrupt me. Yeah, go ahead, Bruce.
John has a question in chat about asking
Sure, thank you for helping me out.
If the annotate option can be done in Microsoft Teams.
I haven't played around with that enough. Once again, test your technology with a person that you can trust and work with. Someone has said yes. The whiteboard is available, Janet, but I don't know if you can share it. To be clear, Zoom is on the leading edge on what needs to be used for virtual meetings, and Microsoft will typically copy it about 1 to 3 months later. That is the pattern that I see. Why am I a Microsoft guy? Because it saves me a lot of money. I don't have to pay for Zoom.
Justin, Savita does have a question. Can you provide steps as to how to share documents virtually?
I'm going to say research that online. I can't, it would take too long. It's one of those things, read the website. First, it's different for each technology. For Microsoft, I'll tell you what, I am going to do it quick. I take that back. Let's help people. Here is the Microsoft Word agenda that I gave you. All you have to do is click share.
And Justin, just very quickly, it is 10:42.
Thank you. When you see an AOL email address, it's typically someone over the age of 60. That is my mother. You could click send right here, or you could say copy a link. And depending upon your company and the way things are set up, and that's where it gets crazy with Microsoft. That link, my mom now, I could send that to her, and she's going to say, "What was this, Justin?" This. Well, you get the idea. Google is much better at it, so it's much easier. So here is my Excel document. Once again, on the upper right-hand corner. Who do I want to share this with? Once again, I will tell my mother. And once again, I hope you see as a demonstration how powerful it is to share your screen. So I have 1 minute left with you. Countdown begins. What I hope I did with you today is I hope you can lead productive meetings better than you could before this. While technology has changed and technology enables you to do new things, a lot of it still is dependent upon you as the leader. So this is reiterating what I said before, is before the meeting, invest the time. If you have to test and play with the technology, go ahead. If you're worried about it, get someone to help you. But it is not the end all be all or that frustrating or that much of a obstacle. A lot of things are still the same. Have a good purpose statement. Have a good agenda with time. Why is that time there? Because it's 11:44. I'm going to go a minute over. Sorry, Andrew. That time is what helped you when you want to break it down into small chunks. And now the agenda is the bad guy. You're following that agenda. Anything that's off topic has to be covered at another time, or we'll bump something else off the agenda. During the meeting, you might be sharing your screen or sharing your documents. It fundamentally changes the way you meet and how you do things. And you'll learn more about that as you practice and do things. After the meeting, send out those meeting notes. Otherwise, things probably won't get done. I will send out all these slides to you and perhaps that beautiful piece of artwork we all created together. And I hope you try some of these things, and please interact back with me, send me an email. Let me know how things are going, because I know you're going to have even more success if you lead great virtual business meetings.
Just on behalf of District 60, thank you very much for a wonderful workshop. You've just summarized it beautifully. I now realize the invaluable purpose behind a purpose statement, the 8-18-1800 rule. I love that as well. the agenda being the bad guy really resonates, and the importance of the meeting notes afterwards. So thank you on behalf of the district. We do have a survey in the chat. We do like to collect feedback from everyone in terms of how they felt about the workshop, and our workshop presenters love to receive that feedback as well. Thank you all for attending today. Our next event is at 11 o'clock, and it's the George Kenyon Award ceremony. And there's a link in the email that would have been sent out this morning from the district, the program quality directors. You can click on that and you can attend that ceremony and see. It's a surprise. We don't know who it is. We won't know until 11 o'clock today. Again, thank you, Justin, and thank you everybody for attending. And a big virtual round of applause or jazz hands for Justin. Woohoo!
And I will stay after the meeting to have any more discussions. It's totally outside the workshop, and please stop the recording and I'll be more, perhaps I'll be more risque.